It had been another Thursday night like all the others lately. Quiet, uneventful, and wrapped in that heavy kind of stillness that doesn't feel peaceful, just empty. Ethan was still at work. He'd texted earlier to say it would be another late shift, something about a big client meeting in the morning. I told him it was fine, that I'd just make dinner for one. I didn't tell him that the thought of eating alone again made my chest feel hollow. I'd gotten used to it, in a way. The sound of the clock ticking in the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator. The TV playing in the background just to make the house feel less abandoned. But that night something different happened. My phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the name that appeared on the screen made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't explain. Cole Matthews. I'd met him once before, briefly. He was one of Ethan's old friends from college. Someone who had this kind of easy charm you didn't forget. He'd been at our place months ago for a small gathering. Back then, I barely spoke to him beyond polite hellos, but I remember the way he'd looked at me, just long enough to make me wonder if I'd imagined it. "You around tonight?" The text was simple, innocent enough on the surface. But it wasn't a question that should have been sent to me. Not without Ethan knowing. I stared at it for longer than I should have, weighing my options. Could ignore it. I should ignore it. But before my brain could catch up, my fingers were already typing. "I'm home." The reply came quick. "Mind if I stop by? I'm in the neighborhood." I told myself it was nothing. Just a quick visit. Maybe he needed something. Maybe it really was as harmless as it sounded. But deep down, I knew I wouldn't be telling Ethan about it. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Cole stood there, framed by the porch light, wearing a dark jacket over a plain white shirt, sleeves pushed halfway up his forearms. He had that kind of presence that seemed to fill the air around him. Casual, confident, like he already knew you were going to say yes to whatever he asked. "Hey," he said, his voice low, easy. "Sorry for dropping by unannounced. I just thought I'd see how you've been." I stepped aside to let him in, telling myself it was just being polite. In the kitchen, we sat across from each other at the small table. He told me he'd been working on a project nearby, that he'd thought about the last time we saw each other. His words weren't overly suggestive, but there was something in the way he said them, measured like every syllable was deliberate. I laughed lightly at one of his jokes, and as I did, my knee brushed against his under the table. I pulled back instantly, pretending it hadn't happened, but I could feel his eyes on me. "You seem different," he said after a moment, his gaze not moving away. "Different how?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I don't know," he replied, leaning back slightly, but still holding my gaze. "Maybe just not as guarded." I didn't know how to respond to that. The truth was, I was more open than I should have been. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was the way he made every word sound like it mattered. We talked for a while longer, the conversation meandering from small talk to things I hadn't told anyone in a long time. Things about my dreams, my frustrations, the way I sometimes felt invisible in my own life. He listened, really listened, like every sentence I said was worth remembering. At some point, he glanced toward the back of the house. "You built a new deck, right? Mind if I see it?" I hesitated. My pulse had picked up without my permission. I should have said no. I should have told him it was late, that Ethan would be home soon. But I didn't. I stood, motioning toward the sliding door. "Sure," I said, my voice softer than before. The cool night air wrapped around us as we stepped outside. The deck stretched under the glow of a single hanging light. Beyond the railing, the yard disappeared into shadow. Cole rested his hand lightly against the wooden post, looking around with an approving nod. "It's nice out here," he said, turning toward me. Something in the way he said it made it clear he wasn't just talking about the deck. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of crickets somewhere in the darkness. I could feel the weight of his eyes on me, and I knew this was the kind of moment that could change everything. And still, I didn't step away. The night air felt heavier now, like it was pressing in on us, making the space between breaths seem shorter. Cole leaned one shoulder against the deck railing, his eyes still locked on mine. "You seem tense," he said, his tone somewhere between curiosity and certainty. "I'm fine," I replied quickly, though my voice sounded weaker than I wanted it to. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said, the corner of his mouth curling slightly. I looked away, toward the dark stretch of yard, trying to slow my thoughts. I should have walked back inside. I should have ended this. But the truth was, there was a pull here, something I hadn't felt in years. Cole took a step closer, slow and deliberate. I didn't move. "You've been lonely, haven't you?" His words weren't mocking. They were almost soft, as if he already knew the answer. I let out a short, nervous laugh, but it didn't sound convincing. "You don't know me well enough to say that." He tilted his head, studying me. "I know enough." My pulse was unsteady now, each beat echoing in my ears. "Cole, we can't," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he stepped in closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him against the cool night air. His hand brushed mine where it rested on the railing. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Every nerve in my body felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. My mind kept saying stop, but the rest of me didn't listen. He leaned forward just slightly, his voice low. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll leave right now." The words caught in my throat. I knew this was the moment, the one that would decide everything. If I said no, it would all end before it began. If I stayed silent, it wouldn't. I didn't say no. Cole's hand found mine fully this time, his fingers curling around it. The contact was electric, dangerous and thrilling in equal measure. I should have remembered every reason why this was wrong. Ethan's face, our vows, the years we had built together. But right then, those thoughts felt distant, drowned out by something far more immediate. "Come inside," I said quietly, though I wasn't sure if it was me inviting him or him leading me. We stepped back into the warm glow of the kitchen. The world outside vanished. It was just the two of us now, the silence between us thick with unspoken intent. He moved closer again, this time without hesitation. His presence was magnetic, his gaze holding me in place. My breath caught, my thoughts blurring until I wasn't thinking at all. "You're shaking," he murmured, his eyes searching mine. I swallowed hard. "I know." We stood there, suspended in a moment that felt like it could last forever. And then, without another word, we crossed the line. It wasn't sudden. It was deliberate, like we both wanted to make sure we knew exactly what we were doing. Every second was a choice, and every choice pushed us further past the point where we could go back. I heard my own voice, low and unsteady. "Slow down." But he didn't. The world narrowed to the sound of my heartbeat, the feel of his hands, the undeniable truth that whatever happened after tonight, nothing would be the same. Time became slippery, minutes melting together. I don't remember how long it lasted, only that when I finally opened my eyes again, the kitchen looked different, like it had shifted into another version of my life. Cole stepped back just slightly, his chest rising and falling, his gaze never leaving mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was no need. We both knew what had just happened, and we both knew it couldn't be undone. I turned away first, my hands trembling as I reached for the counter, needing something solid to hold on to. My breathing was uneven, my mind scrambling to process what we'd done. "We shouldn't have," I started, but the words caught. "I know," he said. There was no regret in his tone, only certainty. The sound of a distant car door closing snapped me out of whatever trance I'd been in. My heart jumped into my throat. "What time is it?" I asked, my voice quick, almost panicked. Cole glanced toward the clock on the microwave. "Almost 11. Ethan wouldn't be home for another hour." Still, the thought of him walking in, seeing this, made my stomach twist. Cole reached for his jacket, moving with that same calm he'd had all night. "I should go," he said. I didn't answer. I just nodded, unable to meet his eyes again. He left without another word, the quiet click of the door closing behind him sounding louder than it should have. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after that, my hands gripping the edge of the counter, my breath refusing to steady. And somewhere deep down, past the guilt and the fear, there was something else, something I didn't want to admit. I knew I wasn't done. The silence after Cole left was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Every creak in the house, every hum of the appliances felt amplified, like the walls themselves knew what I had done. I stood there in the kitchen, my hands still braced against the counter, trying to will my heartbeat back to normal. I told myself to move, to wash my face, change my clothes, do something to erase any trace of what had happened. But my legs felt heavy, my mind caught somewhere between disbelief and denial. An hour later, I heard Ethan's car pull into the driveway. The sound of the engine cutting off made my stomach clench. The front door opened, and there he was, tired, his tie loose, the faint smell of coffee and late-night work clinging to him. "Hey," he said with a small smile, dropping his keys into the bowl by the door. "Sorry I'm so late. Long day." I forced a smile back, hoping it didn't look as strained as it felt. "It's fine. I just made some tea. Want some?" "Maybe in a bit," he replied, moving past me toward the bedroom. "I just need to sit down." I followed him, my eyes darting to the back door without meaning to. I half expected Cole to still be there somehow, even though I knew he was gone. Ethan sank onto the couch, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the storm in my chest. I sat beside him, careful to keep just enough space between us so he wouldn't notice how tense I was. Every time his hand brushed mine, I felt like I might flinch. That night, lying in bed next to him, I stared at the ceiling while he slept. His breathing was slow, steady, trusting. The guilt was a weight pressing down on my ribs, but tangled up in it was something I couldn't ignore. The memory of Cole's voice, the way he had looked at me, like I was the only person in the world. The days that followed were worse. I found myself jumping whenever my phone buzzed, my heart racing before I even looked. Most of the time it was just work emails, group texts from friends, reminders for appointments. But then, on a Wednesday afternoon, it wasn't. "Cole Matthews. Can I see you?" Just 3 words. No hi. No explanation, just an invitation if you could call it that. I stared at it for a full minute, my thumb hovering over the screen. I thought about deleting the message, blocking his number, pretending it had never come. I thought about Ethan's face if he ever found out. But I also thought about that night on the deck. About the way my heart had pounded, not from fear, but from feeling alive in a way I hadn't in years. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I set my phone down, walked into the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. I told myself it was over, that it had to be. But the glass sat untouched on the counter as I picked up my phone again. I typed out a single word. "When?" His reply came almost instantly. "Tonight." The sound of the message alert seemed to echo through the house, like the decision had already been made before I'd even sent the text. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went through the motions, answering emails, making dinner, asking Ethan about his day. All while my mind kept circling back to what was coming. It had been another Thursday night like all the others lately, but the anticipation was there all the same, and wrapped in that heavy kind of stillness that doesn't feel peaceful. That night, after Ethan left for another late shift, Ethan was still at work. I sat alone on the couch. He texted earlier to say it would be another late shift, long shadows across the room. Something about a big client meeting in the morning. The clock ticked toward the time we'd agreed on. Fine. When the night came, I froze. For one. I could have ignored it. I didn't tell him that the thought of eating alone again made my chest feel hollow. But my body moved before my mind caught up. The sound of the clock ticking in the kitchen. I opened it, and the hum of the refrigerator. Same faint smile. The TV playing in the background just to make the house feel less. Somewhere in the back of my mind. But that night, I knew I was standing at the edge of something I wouldn't be able to come back from. I didn't recognize the number at first. But I didn't step away. But the name that appeared on the screen